Can you still use a 17-inch MacBook Pro in 2018? Let's find out. This behemoth is a mid-2010 17-inch MacBook Pro, and it's essentially the mammoth of the MacBook family. It's huge, it's ancient, it's awe-inspiring, and it's long extinct. Now, before we go any further, I should note that this is actually the first 17-inch MacBook Pro I've ever owned or laid my hands on, so naturally I filmed the unboxing experience when mine arrived from eBay. Okay, so my 17-inch MacBook Pro has arrived, and I'm really excited because not only have I never owned a 17-inch MacBook Pro, even though I've always wanted to, I've never even, held one. So, let's jump right in and unbox this thing. It's enormous! The bottom's a little bit scratched up. I don't know if that comes across on camera, but this thing is massive. I'm gonna open it up for the first time. Holy cow. It's huge! The space around the trackpad and the width of the speakers. Oh my god, it's enormous. Alright, well, I have to go set this thing up, and we'll get back into the normal video now. The 17-inch MacBook Pro was introduced alongside the 15-inch MacBook Pro in 2006. Its size bracket carried over from the PowerBook that preceded it, which used a display taken straight from the 17-inch iMac. The 17-inch MacBook Pro carried on into the unibody years, being updated along with the rest of the lineup in 2009, 2010, and twice in 2011, before being discontinued in 2012. There is a lot of speculation as to why the 17-inch was discontinued, but I think it boils down to a lack of demand for the massive device, as well as Apple wanting to simplify their lineup a little bit, especially after introducing the Retina MacBook Pro, which clearly marked the future of MacBooks. The unit that I have is a spec'd out 2010 model. This one is upgraded to the 2.8 GHz Core i7. That's a dual-core hyper-threaded processor for this year. The upgraded 8 GB of 1066 MHz RAM, and an optional 120 GB solid-state drive. For graphics, we have an NVIDIA GT330M chip with 512 MB of VRAM that outputs to this fantastic 1920 by 1200 anti-glare display. The anti-glare display has the same resolution as the normal glossy display, but adds the matte finish and aluminum bezels around the side, and was a $50 option. One thing I'm very confused about is the processor in my unit, because I've combed through Apple's support documentation as well as the Internet Archive, and the 2.8 GHz processor didn't exist. I mean, obviously it does, and it's documented on everymac.com, which is a useful site for determining what specification your MacBook Pro has based on the model number or the serial number. However, on Apple's website, as well as on the technical specification sheet, the only two processor options available for the 17-inch are listed as the 2.53 GHz dual-core i5 and a $200 option, which is the 2.66 GHz Core i7. There's no mention of a 2.8 GHz existing. So, why did I pick up this 17-inch and not the more powerful 2011 models with quad-core i7s and better graphics? Well, the 2010 offers a good balance between price, reliability, and performance. See, the 2011 models are very expensive, as they are the most powerful 17-inch models that were ever made. And they also suffer from the infamous 2011 GPU defect, making them a potentially costly disaster waiting to happen. On the flip side, 2009 and earlier models use older Core 2 Duos, which are aging and much slower than this Core i7. So I settled on this 2010, which I picked up for $250 shipped. Whoa, wait, hold up. I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, what? $250 for an 8-year-old machine? That's crazy! Well, these 17-inch models still command a hefty premium over standard 13 and 15-inch books, so $250 really was a steal. I see many late 2011s fetch over $1,000. So why was I able to get mine for so cheap? Well, the seller had listed this unit for parts because he stated that it was overheating. Upon receiving my unit, I treated the old girl to my fan, vent, and board cleaning, as well as a nice repaste of the CPU and GPU, and I have to say she's doing a lot better. Before I repasted, I tested in Cinebench for a score of 180 CB. After my therapy, she's scoring 250. This is admittedly not fantastic, similar to the score of a base model 13-inch MacBook Pro from 2012, but it gets the job done. To be honest, performance has been a bit of a mixed bag for me. On one hand, I think it's doing just fine. As I said, the CPU is very similar to that of a mid-2012 13-inch MacBook Pro, but it does seem a little bit sluggish in certain tasks, and some of the UI animations are buggy. Now then, we need to talk about the elephant in the room, and it is the size of this device, which is truly elephantine. This thing is insanely huge. I can't help but giggle at its ridiculous proportions. The keyboard and trackpad look like they're drowning in aluminum. I find it ironic a little bit because the Touch Bar MacBook Pro has a laughably enormous trackpad, where this one is comically tiny. Maybe it's just that I'm used to the proportions of a 15-inch MacBook Pro, but this 17-inch just looks silly. Apart from the huge size, there really aren't too many differences between the 17-inch and 15-inch MacBook Pros, so it can be hard to justify the huge increase in size and weight. Apart from the display, the only real differences are that the 17-inch adds another USB port and swaps out the SD card slot for an Express Card 34 slot, which is of arguable relevance in 2018. I personally would rather have an SD card reader, though some people do still find an Express Card slot to be useful. As far as the internal specifications, there are no differences whatsoever between the 15-inch and the 17-inch MacBook Pros. So I do have to talk a little bit about the display, because that's really been the hidden gem of this MacBook Pro for me. While the rest of the device has pretty strange proportions, the display has absolutely wonderful proportions. Most unibody MacBook Pros have the classic thick bezels, but not this device. Look how thin these bezels are. I'm not even talking a little bit thinner than most. These are legitimately thin bezels. They're thinner than that of a Retina MacBook Pro. Also, the display these tiny bezels house is actually really good. This 17-inch 1920 by 1200 panel looks really nice and crisp, and it makes sense that it does, because this is actually the highest pixel density display you can get on a MacBook Pro outside of a Retina display. Its 133 pixels per inch is higher than even the high-res 15-inch unibody MacBook Pros, which come in at 128 pixels per inch. While the size and proportions of this computer might throw some people off, everything that you interact with on this machine is right at home with other Apple laptops. We have this same great backlit chiclet keyboard we all know and love, and the wonderful multi-touch trackpad. I/O is good as well, with MagSafe Ethernet 3 USB ports, mini DisplayPort, and dual mic and headphone jacks. So is the 17-inch MacBook Pro worth it in 2018? Well, yes and no. I really like this device. It's a cool piece of kit and great for media playback, and it's also natively supported in macOS High Sierra, but this thing is aging very obviously. When macOS Mojave is released later this year and Apple increases the cutoff date for supported MacBooks to mid-2012, they'll essentially be consigning every 17-inch MacBook Pro to the history books. Couple this with the older processors and the still inflated price tag over a nearly identical 15-inch model, and the value for money here is questionable. Despite that, I still really like this big old boy. If anything, just to have such a massive and interesting piece of technology in my possession. I definitely think this machine is useful for media playback, for word processing, even for just normal tasks that most people do with their Mac. This thing still has the power to handle that just fine. If you appreciate what the 17-inch MacBook Pro has to offer, and you can find a good deal, these things are not only really fun, but well worth your time. So, thank you guys so much for watching. That'll do it for today's video. As usual, make sure to like, comment, subscribe. Feel free to follow me on Twitter @LukeMiani. Don't forget to join my subreddit. The link is in the description below. I also have a new PayPal donation link because a couple people were asking about that. So, if you're interested in that, I guess you can use that. But that'll do it for today's video. I will see you guys in the next one.